morning, good afternoon, good evening. President Ibrahim Traore of Burkina Faso. He has made headlines. And it looks like he is hated by many leaders, especially in the West and in Africa, and yet loved and admired by many ordinary people, particularly in Africa. Here is the latest story telling of how somebody has already made 18 attempts at his life.
Frustration that General Langley, himself a black man, was chosen to deliver these accusations. This isn't the first time the U.S. has used a black official to peddle narratives against African nations. It raises uncomfortable questions. Why is a person of African descent being used to sell the idea of African instability? Is this strategy meant to silence Pan-African unity before it fully takes root? The truth is, what's happening in Burkina Faso has become a powerful symbol across the continent. It's an awakening, an uncomfortable realization for many that Africa's poverty may not simply be due to bad leadership or corruption, but by design.
Burkina Faso is on high alert. The nation is shaken. And once again, President Ibrahim Traore proves he's not just a leader, he's a survivor. In a shocking turn of events, 2 foreign snipers have been arrested by Traore's elite security forces just meters away from the presidential convoy. According to military sources, the snipers were strategically positioned and heavily armed, with clear intent to assassinate President Traore. But what they didn't know was this: Traore and his security were 10 steps ahead. Acting on classified intelligence, the army had already set a trap. The snipers were captured before they could pull the trigger, no shots were fired, no lives were lost, and Traore remained untouched. They tried to silence a revolution, one commander said, but we silenced them first. The snipers, whose identities remain undisclosed, are currently in military custody.
A design that benefits global powers at the expense of local prosperity. And when any leader tries to break that design, they are met with resistance, slander, and sometimes elimination. This conversation has opened old wounds, but also sparked new consciousness. More Africans are now questioning the legitimacy of foreign involvement in their affairs. They are also looking inwards, asking if their nations are truly free or still living in the shadows of colonial puppeteering. As this story continues to unfold, we must ask ourselves, is this about justice or control? Is Captain Traore a criminal or a patriot being silenced for saying no? And most critically, who should Africans trust, their own voices or the ones handed to them by outsiders? We want to hear your thoughts. Do you believe Captain Traore is being unfairly targeted?
Well, there's no doubt that President Ibrahim Traore has made waves. I think one has got to ask, why is it that he has made such an impact? In my view, one of the reasons why he has made such a big impact is that he has come out to be a totally different kind of leader, African leader, than what the continent has been used to. Africa has been held back by corrupt, incompetent, and murderous thugs whose only interest seems to be plunder. As much as they have made it a habit blaming, particularly the West, for Africa's problems. The truth of the matter is, they are usually the number one source of the problem. It is common knowledge that most of Africa's West tyrants have been looting the country, their respective countries, blind, and taking the wealth, the stolen wealth, outside their country. Leaving their countries totally impoverished. Africa has had this problem of having vast resources and yet be the continent which is politically at most unstable. I mean, Africa has had civil wars, endless civil wars, ever since the various African countries started gaining their independence. And it seems like the wealth, the mineral wealth and other resources that the continent has been, instead of benefiting the people, has in fact been the source of the instability, because some of the looted wealth has ended up being used to buy guns with which the civil war would be fought. One of those countries that have been torn apart by such activities is the Democratic Republic of Congo. Zimbabwe has been independent for the last 45 years, and yet the country has yet to hold free, fair, and credible elections. The last election in 2023, ZANU-PF blatantly rigged those elections. And one of the reasons why the regime was able to do that is that it used the billions of dollars looted from the country's wealth, gold, diamonds, lithium, you name it, to bankroll its vote rigging activities. So instead of the mineral wealth becoming a blessing, it has become a curse for Africa. One of the other reasons why President Ibrahim Traore has really captured the attention of millions of ordinary blacks right across Africa is because he has really shown that he was willing to do things differently. Here is a typical scene of an African leader arriving at the airport to visit another African country. And here is the contrast. Traore visiting Namibia.
No delegation waiting, and out steps one man. Ibrahim Traore, the president of Burkina Faso. No one invited him. No one even knew he was coming. Can you imagine the world's most powerful leaders wait weeks for official invitations to visit other countries? They plan every detail months in advance, but not Traore. He simply showed up. Let me paint you the scene that evening. Windhoek was still buzzing from the morning's bombshell announcement. President Netumbo had just told the world something that sent shockwaves through every corporate boardroom from London to New York. Our oil and gas will serve Namibians first, she had declared. Foreign companies will not dictate our future. Think about that for a moment. Here was a small African nation telling multinational corporations, thank you.
What's happening?
Mate, just idea. You were expecting a bloke, beard, Bible, bad breath.
Yes, that sort of thing.
My apologies.
We'll handle this ourselves. The audacity, the courage within hours. Headlines exploded across every major newspaper. CNN was calling it a seismic shift. The BBC labeled it unprecedented defiance. But while the world's media scrambled to understand what this meant, something extraordinary was happening 7,000 miles away in Burkina Faso. Ibrahim Traore was watching the news coverage in his modest office. And he wasn't thinking about politics or economics. He was thinking about dignity. You see, Traore understood something that many world leaders have forgotten. When one African nation stands up for itself, it's not just about that country. It's about every village child who's been told they're not good enough. Every mother who's watched foreign companies extract wealth while her family goes hungry. Every father who's dreamed of a future where his children won't have to beg for what rightfully belongs to them. So what did this young president do? He picked up his phone and called his pilot. "Prepare the plane," he said simply. "We're going to Namibia." "Mr. President," his aide stammered, "but there's no summit scheduled. No diplomatic protocol has been—" "I didn't ask about protocol," Traore interrupted gently. "I asked you to prepare the plane." And here's where this story gets truly remarkable. This wasn't some grand political gesture calculated for cameras. There were no photographers waiting at the airport, no press releases, no advance team. Just a man who felt, in his heart, that he needed to be somewhere. The flight from Ouagadougou to Windhoek takes about 6 hours. Can you imagine those 6 hours, Traore, sitting alone in that plane, watching the African continent stretch out beneath him, thinking about the courage it took for Netumbo to make that declaration, thinking about all the African leaders who'd stayed silent for too long. When the plane touched down in Windhoek at nearly midnight, the security officials were, well, they were utterly confused. "Sir," one of them radioed to his supervisor, "we have an unscheduled arrival. It's the president of Burkina Faso."
I'll stop it there. To cut the long story short, he went to Namibia to express his support for what the president of Namibia had done in standing up and saying, Namibia, the oil of Namibia will belong to Namibians. Because this had raised such a storm, particularly in the Western, where they are used to having a Western company owning these mines or oil wells of Africa, from the various African countries, controlling them completely. When she had said that, not many other African countries or leaders had backed her up. He did. This is what has made him so special to most people. Where other African countries want to make a big song and dance about something, we just do it. If you believe this is the right thing, you will get up and do it. Other African countries will make a big song and dance, like our president, Emerson Mnangagwa. God knows how many times he has made a big song and dance about the Mbuzi flyover. This is typical, particularly during elections, towards elections. They would want to make a big song and dance about their achievements, what they have achieved, when in reality, there is a lot of rot and decay in the country. Recently, it has emerged that even some of the big hospitals, like Parenyatwa in Harare, are in such a sorry state. There was one story of one individual who died crying for painkillers. The hospital did not have any. And yet, Emerson Mnangagwa is in the habit of telling the nation that he should be allowed to stay in power beyond even the two-term limits supposed to end in 2028, because he claims he is delivering Vision 2030. He's turning the country around from being a poor country to an upper middle income country. The status, apparently, the nation had in 1980 when we gained our independence. Our GDP per capita then was $6,000 per person. Over the last 45 years, it has dropped to $2,000 per person. And he is now claiming that he can have that increased threefold in the next 5 years. And yet there's no sign that things are improving. The other day, many Zimbabweans were circulating on the social media how one of the big hospitals the regime had promised to build, Lupani Hospital, in 1999, is still not completed, now 25 years later. Indeed, the road from Bulawayo to Lupani is in such a sorry state that there are potholes. And yet it's supposed to be one of the A roads in the country. How anyone can still claim that is delivering Vision 2030 beggars belief. Whereas Traore has made changes in the governance of the country, in the use of the country's resources, that has benefited the people of that country. Things have changed on the ground. I think this is what has made him so popular. And maybe this is also the same reason why there have been 18 attempts on his life. there are many people who have been gaining from Africa's chaos and gross mismanagement and corrupt leaders. And while those leaders remain in office, they have gained. And so to see a leader who is of a totally different cut is what they could not stomach. And hence the reason why some of them want him dead. I think every thinking, ordinary black African would want to salute the president of Burkina Faso and thank him for showing for the first time that Africa can have visionary leaders who can do something useful for the country. I think it would be amiss if I did not add that the one thing that President Traore should look into is producing a constitution, restore the rule of law, to guarantee political stability for that country, not only during his lifetime, but for generations to come. Because if, God forbid, he should drop dead, the guy who follows him may want to exercise the same powers that he has been exercising, where he has been making all the decisions himself without reference to any cabinet or parliament. And if they happen to have the misfortune of having a tyrant and a buffoon, like some of the many African leaders we have seen, all the economic gains that Burkina Faso has registered so far will all disappear overnight. That is a danger that cannot be ignored. I sincerely hope that Africa has turned a new page where we have got quality leaders, but are not just a flash in the pan, but create political stability and prosperity for their nations, not just for a decade or 2 decades, but for generations. That is not something, that is something worth aspiring to. And I think Africa should aspire to that. Thank you very much. Have a good day.